The Battle of Leyte Gulf was fought near the Philippines over several days with a number of different engagements. The combined conflict made it the largest naval battle of the Second World War, and by some estimates, the largest naval battle in history. More than 200,000 naval soldiers, auxiliary personnel, and officers were involved in the conflict between October 23rd and 26th, 1944. The forces were mostly American and Australian on the Allied side, against the Imperial Japanese on the Axis side. The naval battle was to support the amphibious invasion of Leyte in an effort to force the Japanese from the Philippine Archipelago. Doing so would begin to isolate the Japanese Empire from much of the oil and raw materials fueling their war efforts. The battle is historically considered to have been divided into 4 separate fights: the Battle of Sibuyan Sea, the Battle of Surigao Strait, the Battle of Cape Engaño, and the Battle of Samar. Paramount among the battles was the engagement at Surigao Strait, where the U.S. 7th Fleet Support Force almost wholly destroyed Japan's southern force. It would be the last battleship battle in history, as the Japanese force, which included 2 battleships, attempted to run the gauntlet through a trap set by the Americans. The American force, including 6 battleships, awaited and managed to cross the T over the ragged Japanese line, completing the classic naval maneuver for the last time ever. The Pacific Theater campaigns between 1942 and 1944 had pushed most Japanese forces from their bases in the south and center of the Pacific Ocean, while leaving the few that remained isolated. The Americans captured the majority of the Mariana Islands through amphibious landings in June of 1944. Their efforts effectively breached the inner defense ring of Japan, and provided the United States with a base from which to send superfortress bombers to strike their main home islands. The subsequent plan was to cut Japan off from its supply lines to southeastern Asia, to prevent them from accessing oil and raw materials. 2 different plans were organized as to how to approach the matter. Admiral Nimitz, Admiral King, and several members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff believed that the Japanese should be blockaded in the Philippines, while Formosa, today known as Taiwan, was invaded. On the other hand, U.S. Army General Douglas MacArthur proposed invading the Philippines directly, while sending carrier raids against Formosa to pin down Japan's land-based aircraft. Nimitz and President Roosevelt both agreed that the Philippines should be a priority target, but could not agree on which plan to adopt. After 2 months of back and forth, Nimitz eventually agreed to MacArthur's plan of sending his forces to invade Leyte in the middle of the Philippines. The Japanese Imperial Navy would be waiting, having anticipated the broader goal of the Allied strategy. Nearly all of Japan's forces would be committed to a decisive battle. They just weren't sure where it would take place. As the initial carrier strikes on Formosa by the U.S. 3rd Fleet began on October 12th, Japan launched Shogo Victory Scenario 2. This plan repositioned most of Japan's remaining carrier aircraft to Formosa in defense of the island. The Japanese amassed some 1,250 to 1,500 naval fighters and bombers in what they hoped would strike a crippling blow to America's carrier forces. Indeed, early Japanese reports from the air battle of Formosa claimed the sinking of Allied ships, including over 10 aircraft carriers and 5 battleships. In reality, the Japanese had been salvaged and left without any air cover in the region. Not only had the American 3rd Fleet taken minimal losses, on October 17th, the Allies revealed their hand as the first amphibious landings began on the smaller island of the Leyte Gulf, and the 7th Fleet made its appearance. Japan was quickly forced to enact Shogo 1, their planned defense of the Philippines. The Japanese Imperial Navy, however, had already committed and lost most of their naval air groups at Formosa, rendering their aircraft carriers toothless. Instead, the carriers would be used as bait as part of a northern force to lure the Allied covering forces away from Leyte. Separately, Vice Admiral Kurita's powerful center force was to break through to attack the Allied landings of the island of Leyte from the north. From the south, a southern force split into groups led by Vice Admirals Shoji Nishimura and Kiyohide Shima would converge and meet Kurita through the Surigao Strait. The combined Japanese naval power was tremendous, but the complex coordination required was just as immense. The Battle of Surigao Strait was the last historical battle between naval vessels. It was only one of two such engagements in the Pacific front of World War II, with the other occurring at Guadalcanal. As Japan's southern force approached, Rear Admiral Oldendorf's 7th Fleet Support Force received the order to prepare for a night battle. Oldendorf made the decision to set a trap in the Surigao Strait. Since there was only one way in and one way out, the admiral believed that he could block in the Japanese forces if his superior fleet was positioned correctly. At the center of his battle line were the veteran Pearl Harbor ships West Virginia, Maryland, California, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee, all of which had been sunk or intentionally damaged during the first attack. This engagement served as their revenge. The remaining American force also included 4 heavy cruisers, including an Australian ship, 4 light cruisers, and 28 destroyers, both American and Australian. Since the Japanese were known for their nighttime torpedo attacks, Oldendorf wanted absolute superiority by strength in numbers. He later stated, quote, "We didn't want them to pull another Savo Island on us." The Battle of Savo Island had been a humiliating defeat for the US, with 4 Allied cruisers left at the bottom of the ocean. Each available PT boat was placed at the south entrance of the strait, with 39 of them patrolling at nighttime. They were tasked with attacking any incoming Japanese vessel with torpedoes, followed by attacks by destroyers. Then cruisers and battleships would engage with their guns should the Japanese get within range. The 2 Japanese task forces led by Nishimura and Shima on the southern route to Leyte needed to pass through the Surigao Strait, between the islands of Panon and Dingat. The Japanese hoped that both task forces would arrive simultaneously to assist in Vice Admiral Kurita's penetration from the other side of the Gulf. Yet they were unable to coordinate because the Imperial Japanese Navy was maintaining radio silence to avoid informing the enemy of their moves. Vice Admiral Nishimura's force approached Surigao Strait alone, leaving Vice Admiral Shima's force nearly 25 miles behind. It didn't help that Kurita's center force was also slowed down by intense air attacks. Nishimura's ships included the aged but capable battleships Yamashiro and Fuso, 4 destroyers, and the heavy cruiser Mogami. The group was attacked by bombers on October 24th, but they sustained little damage. Both his task force and Shima's were able to escape attracting too much attention from American aircraft carriers before making it to the entry of the strait. Oldendorf sent his destroyers and PT boats to the expected path of the Japanese southern force. As Nishimura's group entered the strait, it placed itself directly in the jaws of the American 7th Fleet Support Force. Still, Oldendorf's battleship had been expecting to focus on bombing the shore, rather than attacking other surface ships. Therefore, they were carrying more explosive rounds than the armor-piercing shells needed to penetrate the hull of an enemy battleship. The American vessels were also short on fuel, but it would matter little, as the Japanese were about to run right into them. Upon Nishimura's arrival into the Surigao Strait in the dark early hours of October 25th, the Americans only managed to harass the Japanese. Oldendorf's squadron of PT boats failed to hit the Japanese ships, although they did provide useful information on the Japanese positions. As Nishimura pressed on, he was met by American destroyers that joined the fray with great success. They hit 3 Japanese destroyers, 2 of which sank then and there, while another sank later. Several larger ships were also heavily damaged. The battleship Fuso was hit by 1 or 2 torpedoes before it caught fire and subsequently rolled over. The battleship Yamashiro and heavy cruiser Mogami continued along with only 1 destroyer, the Shigure, straight into Oldendorf's line. This led to the last battleship versus battleship encounter of the battleship era as Oldendorf crossed the T on top of Nishimura's now ragged task force. The USS West Virginia recognized Yamashiro at about 23 miles, with the USS California and USS Tennessee locating it soon after. Still in the dark of the early morning, the USS West Virginia attacked when the Japanese vessel was 13 miles away using advanced targeting radar. The other 2 American battleships struck soon after. A thunderstorm of fire from American cruisers and destroyers followed. They took longer to engage because they did not have as advanced of a radar. Both the Yamashiro and Mogami were critically damaged while trying to turn back from the trap. The Yamashiro soon rolled over, while the Mogami and Shigure managed to withdraw and meet up with Shima. Shima's task force had managed to evade the PT boats and destroyers in the mouth of the strait. Quickly realizing the trap, Shima turned and fled, with most of his ships surviving to fight another day. The Mogami, unable to overcome the massive damage taken from the American battleship's bombardment, was scuttled. Of Nishimura's 7 original vessels, only the Shigure survived the battle. It would fall to the American submarine Blackfin in January 1945 near Kotabaru in Malaya. Most of Shima's ships would be sunk later in other engagements around Leyte. Amidst the wider Battle of Leyte Gulf, the U.S. Sixth Army secured Leyte's beachheads thanks to the cover provided by American naval forces in encounters such as the Battle of Surigao Strait. Still, the island would not truly fall to the Allies until December of 1944, thanks to the fierce land battle that awaited them. The Japanese were able to continue resupplying their troops from neighboring islands, and they would absorb nearly 50,000 losses before America seized the last Japanese port at Leyte.